24 hours, 22 new cases.
We would like to see this situation end sooner rather than later.
Contact tracers have chased down transmission chains in almost all cases, with only one still a mystery and 3 of the new cases under investigation.
But I can confirm that those 3 cases also are in southeastern Sydney residents.
But there are fears over reports of one infected person attending 2 different gyms, as well as 3 hairdressers who worked at a prestigious double bay salon for days while positive.
And what we're concerned is the over 900 clients that attended or that potentially are contacts may acquire the infection.
With that concern come new restrictions. From midnight, anyone who lives or works in Sydney, Woollahra, Waverley or Randwick local government areas will only be able to leave home for the 4 all too familiar reasons.
And that will be in place for a week.
Intimate partner visits are permitted, so long as they do not live outside the lockdown area.
So it doesn't matter where you live. If you've worked in those 4 local government areas, you're subject to that as well.
But the mystery over how the limo driver at the heart of the outbreak became infected has not been solved.
And we are unlikely to do so.
The one thing that is clear, 9 days since he tested positive, Sydney now has 71 cases, with 65 linked to the Bondi cluster, and it's far from over.
We are likely to see more cases in coming days.
Epidemiologist Mary-Louise McLaws joins us now. Mary-Louise, 22 new cases today. Most of them are linked and in isolation. I've got my fingers and toes crossed as I ask you this question. Has New South Wales got this under control?
Lisa, good evening. It's unlikely that it will be completely under control. Sydney-siders travel between different locations for work and for shopping and enjoyment. And it's likely that in some of those green zones, there may be somebody who doesn't realise they're infected, who may have forgotten to use their QR code and hasn't been identified by the contact tracers yet. And we know that even when we're dealing with a cluster that isn't a variant of concern, and this one is a very serious one, it takes about 30 days to get it under control, to get zeros. So while we may not get a whole lot of new cases, I think we will get new cases, sadly.
Professor, a lot of people are saying that they're confused by these restrictions. Do you think the government's been clear enough with what this lockdown actually means?
Well, I think that, first of all, the lockdown was a bit slow, and probably the authorities assumed that Sydney-siders would make a decision for themselves to go into hibernation or wear a mask in public. But that didn't happen. And they're probably a little more confused because some of these areas that have been deemed to be locked down have that lockdown border, running smack bang in the middle of a road, and one side's locked down and the other isn't. So it is very confusing. And I think given that it's Delta, we probably should have all gone into lockdown, if not last week, which would have been very effective, certainly now, and particularly leading up to a weekend and school holidays, where some Sydney-siders who are in those locations of lockdown may quickly hop in their car and go to their holiday home or somewhere where they can have some respite. So watch this space. I hope I'm wrong, but we may be seeing more cases because there's a lot of confusion. And yes, the virus uses human beings to move around, and that's what we'll be doing.
Well, there is a lot of confusion because of the lack of communication, or rather, do you think that the language is strong enough from the government?
Well, the language has been very strong. I mean, right from the start, they've told us that this is very serious, that they are in great concern about this, but their actions never met their rhetoric, and that's what made it so confusing for the public, because they heard it was very serious, but it took a while for public masking to be asked for. Then there was no rapid lockdown, and then the police commissioner came out and said, all right, no more warnings, you're now going to be fined. So then the rhetoric started matching some of the actions, but that could have happened earlier.
Mary-Louise, can you explain something to me? I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this because Gladys Berejiklian said this today. Let's take a listen.
Because this is a contagious strain, we anticipate that close to 100% of everybody in a household is likely to get the virus if one person has had positive test result.
100% of a household, that's not a great statistic, but we know that under these restrictions, one household might have some people who are locked down and others who are not locked down. So how is that going to work?
Well, perhaps she was just focusing on those that already have a case. They know they have a case, and sadly their families are captive and their household, and they are inevitably going to be infected. However, I think what you're rightly concerned about are some of the other families in the green zones that are with each other, particularly during these school holidays, where there may be a case. They don't know about it yet, and their whole family, of course, will get it as well. And they will go out and socialise, because don't forget, this particular Delta doesn't make you cough necessarily, doesn't give you a temperature immediately, makes you have a bit of a sore throat and a headache, and can give you some diarrhea, doesn't make you always lose your sense of smell and taste. So you may not think you've got COVID, and so you'll have plenty of time to pass it on, because it would appear as if this particular variant, you become more infectious a little earlier than you did with the previous strains.
That is great detail to know. As always, thanks so much, Mary Louise.
Take care.
In addition to this, I'm hearing, this is from the Health Minister, that there are some occasions such as weddings that are exempt to this. I don't even know whether to do air quotes when I call it a lockdown, because I'm not really too sure what it is. But then you have these events like weddings and funerals that could possibly be exempt, but then are they exempt to people who live in those local government areas or from anywhere? There just seems to be so much conflicting information out there.
Because we saw something this afternoon saying that people can go to weddings that are in the red zones.
And they can travel from anywhere.
From anywhere in there. They just can't go anywhere else on the way. And then they can go back after leaving the red zone to wherever they live.
So if somebody has a wedding on tomorrow, hypothetically speaking,
are you getting married again?
do they go? Genuinely.
Yeah.
They're trying to be a good citizen.
Yeah.
Like, do they go? Can they go? Should they go? Because should they go, it's very different to can they go. And sometimes you need to be very clear on which one you're talking about.
Well, I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
Not a lot of clarity going around.
It depends how hot your dress is, really. To be
it's
totally
stunning,
honest.
stunning,
Yeah.
stunning.
Good point.
With so much content online, it's sometimes hard to keep up with it all. And let's face it, who has the time? The Project YouTube has you covered with the stories that matter. Hit subscribe for a daily list of the news that you need to know.